I'm John, 34 male, and my own family stole nearly $3,000 from me days after they all ghosted my son's 8th birthday party. The silence was the loudest thing in the room. It was louder than the deflating balloons, one of which sagged sadly from the corner of the ceiling like a weary partygoer who'd had too much to drink. It was louder than the gentle hum of the refrigerator, which held a custom-made 3-layer dinosaur cake that would now last my small family of 3 for a week. It was certainly louder than the quiet, hiccuping sobs coming from my son Leo, who was curled up on the sofa, his face buried in a cushion. My wife Sarah sat beside him, her hand gently rubbing his back. Her jaw was tight, a muscle twitching near her temple that I recognized as her tell for pure, unadulterated fury. She didn't look at me, but I knew we were thinking the exact same thing. They did it again. The guest list for Leo's 8th birthday wasn't extravagant, it was just family. My family, my dad Richard, my younger sister Chloe, a couple of aunts and uncles who lived nearby, all of them had RSVP'd yes. All of them had promised they'd be there. Chloe had even sent a text that morning, "Can't wait to see my favorite nephew, got him the best gift." And yet the clock had ticked past the 2:00 p.m. start time. 2:30 p.m. came and went. At 3:00 p.m. Leo's bright, excited eyes started to cloud with confusion. By 3:30 p.m. the first tear had traced a path through the little dinosaur decal Sarah had painted on his cheek that morning. Now at 4:00 p.m. the party was officially over before it had ever begun. No calls, no texts, no one. Just an empty house filled with the ghosts of broken promises. This feeling, this crushing weight of being an afterthought was not new to me. It was a scar tissue I had been building up my entire life. The dynamic in my family was as old as my memory. My sister, Chloe, was the sun, and I was a distant planet, occasionally catching a bit of warmth but never truly in the orbit of my father's affection. I remember my own 10th birthday vividly. I had a party at one of those laser tag arenas, the kind that smelled like plastic and adolescent excitement. I was on top of the world. My dad was there, which was a victory in itself. But halfway through the first game, his phone buzzed. It was Chloe, then 7, having what my dad termed a major crisis over a diorama for school that was due the next day. I watched through the plexiglass window of the arena as my dad's face shifted from mild amusement to grave concern. He came in, patted my head, and said, "Sorry, sport, Chloe needs me," and he left. He missed me winning the game, he missed the cake, he missed everything. I learned a valuable lesson that day. My achievements were secondary to Chloe's slightest inconvenience. This pattern didn't fade with age, it calcified. When Sarah and I announced our engagement at a family dinner, my father's reaction was a slow, deliberate nod. "Well," he'd said, sipping his water. "That's nice, son. Sarah, welcome to the family." It was polite but as warm as a sterile hospital room. A month later, Chloe, who was working as a sales assistant at a clothing store, was promoted to keyholder. My dad threw a lavish dinner for her at a fancy steakhouse. He gave a tearful speech about how proud he was of his little girl making her way in the world. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table, her silent support a beacon in my sea of invisibility. The most recent and perhaps most telling incident had been last Christmas. Sarah and I had spent a lot of time picking out the perfect gift for my dad. He was a retired construction manager and had recently taken up woodworking. We found him a high-end Japanese-style handsaw set, a beautiful and thoughtful gift that cost a pretty penny. On Christmas morning, he opened it and gave his standard, "Oh, that's nice." Later, he handed us our gift, a generic $100 gift card to a department store. An hour later, he presented Chloe with her gift, a brand new top-of-the-line laptop. "So you can really get your influencer business off the ground, sweetie," he'd beamed, his face alight with a pride he never showed me. I had to be the one to help him order it online. I remember the checkout page. He'd fumbled with his own credit card, typing the number in wrong twice. Impatient, he'd gestured to me. "Here, just use your card, John. I'll pay you back right away. Just save the details on my computer. It'll be easier for next time." Like a fool, I did. I thought next time meant for a family gift, a collective purchase for a future holiday. I never imagined it would be a loaded weapon left in the hands of a man who had long ago chosen his favorite child. Now, standing in the wreckage of my son's birthday, all those memories swirled together into a bitter cocktail of resentment. It wasn't just about a missed party anymore. It was about the callous, consistent disregard. For my son's feelings, for my feelings. Leo was just an extension of me and therefore just as easy to dismiss. "I'm going to take him upstairs." Sarah's voice was low and steady, cutting through my thoughts. "We'll watch a movie, build the new Lego set we were saving." I nodded, unable to speak. I watched her lead my son, my wonderful, sweet boy, out of the room. As they climbed the stairs, I heard Leo's small voice ask, "Mommy, does Grandpa not love me?" The question struck me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of my lungs. I sank onto the sofa, the cushion still damp with his tears. I picked up my phone, not a single notification, not from my father, not from my sister. It was as if we had simply ceased to exist. In that crushing silence, a cold, hard resolve began to form in the pit of my stomach. Something was different this time. A line had been crossed that I could not and would not ignore. This was the end of the road. I just didn't know how final that end would be. The 4 days that followed Leo's non-party were steeped in a heavy, deliberate silence from my side of the family. It was a familiar cold shoulder, but this time it felt different, more absolute. Before, there might have been a half-hearted excuse texted a day or two later, something like, "So sorry, lost track of time," from Chloe, or a gruff, dismissive, "Something came up," from my dad. This time there was nothing. No digital smoke signals, no carrier pigeons, not even a guilty-looking tumbleweed rolling past my front door. It was a complete and total ghosting. Sarah and I didn't dwell on it, at least not out loud. Our energy was focused entirely on damage control for Leo. We declared his birthday week an official Leo Palooza. We took a day off work and went to the city aquarium, where his face lit up with pure joy at the sight of the stingray petting tank. We let him have ice cream for breakfast. We built the giant Lego space station that had been our backup gift, spreading the pieces all over the living room floor and spending hours creating an interstellar world. It was a conscious effort to paper over the cracks of his disappointment with layers of fun and affection. And it worked. By Tuesday, Leo was back to his cheerful, bubbly self, the memory of the empty party seemingly replaced by sharks and sprinkles. But for me, the silence from my family was a low, constant hum beneath the surface of our forced cheerfulness. I found myself checking my phone compulsively, a masochistic habit of seeking out the rejection I knew was waiting for me. Each time I saw the empty notification screen, a fresh wave of bitterness would wash over me. Did they really think this was acceptable, to promise a child a celebration and then vanish without a word? Did they feel even a flicker of guilt? By Wednesday afternoon, I was at my desk at the small graphic design firm where I worked, trying to focus on a new branding package for a client. The vibrant colors on my screen felt garish and mocking compared to the gray mood that had settled over me. I took a break to pay a few bills online, a mundane task I usually did on autopilot. I logged into my credit card account, my eyes scanning the list of recent transactions. Groceries, gas, the aquarium tickets, a charge from the Lego store, and then a charge that made my blood run cold. Date July 20th, merchant Megatech Electronics, amount $2,900. I stared at the screen, my heart starting to pound against my ribs like a trapped bird. $2,900. Megatech. I hadn't bought anything from Megatech. I hadn't made any large purchases at all. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. Was it fraud? Had my card been skimmed somewhere? It was possible. I immediately texted Sarah. "Hey, quick question. Did you by any chance use my credit card to buy something for $2,900 from Megatech?" Her reply came back almost instantly. "What? No, of course not. What's going on?" My stomach twisted into a tight, painful knot. Megatech Electronics. Why did that name sound so familiar? I closed my eyes, trying to place it. And then it hit me, a memory from a few weeks ago. I was on the phone with Chloe. She had been going on and on about her career as a social media influencer, a venture that so far seemed to consist of her posting heavily filtered photos of her lunch. "If I just had the right equipment, I could really take it to the next level," she'd sighed dramatically. "There's this vlogging kit at Megatech. It has the perfect camera, a ring light, a professional microphone, but it's so expensive. It's like almost $3,000. $3,000, Megatech." The pieces began to click into place with a horrifying, sickening finality. And then the final damning piece of the puzzle slammed down: the Christmas laptop, my dad's computer, my credit card details saved for next time. No, I whispered to myself in the quiet of my office. No, they wouldn't. But I knew they would, of course they wowls. It was the logical, terrible endpoint of a lifetime of this behavior. Neglect was one thing, disappointment was another. This was a breathtaking violation. It wasn't just that they had forgotten my son, it was that they had been busy, actively betraying me while he was at home waiting for them. My hands started to tremble. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a white-hot rage that was so pure it almost felt calm. All the hurt, all the years of being pushed aside, all the quiet swallows of my pride, it all coalesced into this single egregious act. They hadn't just ignored us, they had stolen from us. They had stolen from me, from Sarah, from Leo. They had taken money that I worked hard for, money that could have gone into Leo's college fund or a family vacation, and they had used it to fund my sister's flimsy dream, a dream my father was always more invested in than my reality. I grabbed my phone, my thumb hovering over my dad's contact name. I had to be wrong. I wanted to be wrong. Please let me be wrong. Let there be a simple explanation, a case of sophisticated fraud, anything but the truth that was now staring me in the face. But deep down, I knew. The timing wasn't a coincidence. The store wasn't a coincidence. The amount wasn't a coincidence. It was a conspiracy, and my own family was at the center of it. For a few minutes, I just sat there, paralyzed by the sheer audacity of it. Part of me, the part that had been conditioned for 34 years to make excuses for them, was still trying to build a case for their innocence. Maybe Dad's computer got a virus. Maybe someone hacked his accounts and found my saved payment information. It was a flimsy defense, and it crumbled the moment I pictured my sister's face, her voice oozing with entitlement as she talked about the gear she needed. I had to give them a chance to explain. It was the last thread of filial duty I had left. I stepped out of my office and walked to the small kitchenette, my legs feeling unsteady. I pressed the call button next to my father's name. I listened to it ring, each tone echoing in the cavern of my stomach. One ring, two, three, four, then the click. "You've reached Richard, please leave a message." Straight to voicemail. That was unusual. My dad, retired and surgically attached to his phone, always answered. A cold dread began to creep up my spine. I took a deep breath and dialed Chloe. Her phone rang once, a sharp, jarring sound, and then click. Voicemail. She had declined the call. There was no doubt about it. She saw my name on the screen and hit ignore. The dread solidified into certainty. They were avoiding me. They knew. They had to know I would have received the transaction notification. They were waiting, hiding, hoping I'd just, assume it was a mistake and let it go, or worse, that I'd see it, understand what they'd done, and say nothing, because that's what the good son John always did. Anger, hotter and sharper than any I had felt before, burned away the last vestiges of doubt. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a coordinated act of theft and cowardice. I went back to my desk and typed out a text to my dad, my fingers jabbing at the screen. "Dad, I need to talk to you urgently about a $2,900 charge on my credit card from Mega Tech. Please call me." I hit send, the message delivered instantly. I stared at the screen, waiting for the three little dots to appear indicating he was typing. Nothing. The message sat there marked as read, a silent indictment of his guilt. I sent a similar message to Chloe. "Chloe, call me now." Again read, and again a wall of suffocating silence. They were stonewalling me. They had discussed this. They had a plan. The arrogance of it was staggering. They felt so entitled to my money that they didn't even feel the need to justify taking it. They just took it and disappeared. I packed up my things, told my boss I had a family emergency, and drove home in a daze. The world outside my car windows seemed to move in slow motion. The rage was still there, but now it was accompanied by a profound, hollowing grief. The hope that I had stubbornly clung to for my entire life, the hope that one day my father would see me, that my sister would treat me as a brother instead of a resource, was finally dying. And its death was ugly. I walked into the house and found Sarah in the kitchen, preparing dinner. She looked up, and the smile on her face vanished when she saw mine. "What is it?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "What's wrong?" I leaned against the counter, the story pouring out of me in a torrent of furious whispers. The charge, Mega Tech, Chloe's wish list, the saved card on Dad's computer, the declined calls, the read but ignored texts. Sarah listened, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief, and finally to a quiet, protective fury that mirrored my own. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and came over to me, putting her arms around my waist. "John," she said, her voice firm, "this isn't about favoritism anymore. This isn't them being thoughtless or selfish. This is theft they stole from us, from Leo." Hearing her say it so plainly and without reservation was like a switch being flipped in my brain. She was right. I had spent my whole life reframing their cruelty as carelessness. I had downplayed their neglect as simple forgetfulness. I had made myself smaller and smaller to fit into the tiny space they allocated for me in their lives. And what had it got me? A heartbroken son and a maxed-out credit card. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Sarah pulled back and looked me straight in the eye. Her gaze was clear and unwavering. "We stop playing their game. We stop letting them get away with it. You have to decide right now where the line is. For me, they crossed it the second they made our son cry. This is something else entirely." She was right. The line had been drawn, not by me but by them. They had drawn it with my money in the service of their own selfish desires. The time for benefit of the doubt was over. The time for quiet acceptance was over. I pulled out my phone, my hands no longer shaking. They were steady. My resolve had cooled from a hot, chaotic rage into something cold, hard, and sharp. I opened my messaging app, creating a new message addressed to both my father and my sister. I didn't think about the fallout. I didn't think about awkward future holidays because I knew there wouldn't be any. I didn't think about the family I was about to detonate. All I could think about was Leo's face when he asked if his grandpa loved him. My thumbs moved deliberately, typing out the 7 words that would change everything. Wait for a call from my lawyers. I hit send, the message flew out into the ether, an arrow aimed at the heart of the life I had known. There was no taking it back, and for the first time in days I felt a strange, terrifying sense of peace. The point of no return had been crossed. For 10 minutes the world was still. It was the eeriest kind of silence, the calm before a storm you know is coming. Sarah and I stood in the kitchen, not speaking, our eyes fixed on my phone as it lay on the counter between us. It felt like we had pulled the pin on a grenade and were just waiting for the inevitable blast. Then it happened. The phone buzzed once, then twice, then erupted into a continuous, frantic vibration, skittering across the granite countertop like a panicked insect. The screen lit up with a barrage of notifications from the family group chat, a chat that had been a digital graveyard for the past 5 days. The first message was from my Aunt Carol, my dad's sister. John, what on earth is this about a lawyer? Is everything okay? Before I could even process it, another one came through from her husband, Uncle Mike. You don't threaten family with lawyers, son. Whatever is going on, we can sort it out. They were the opening shots, the confused and concerned messages from the periphery. They didn't know the context, but they smelled smoke. They were trying to put out a fire without realizing the house was already engulfed in flames. And then the epicenter of the explosion hit. A notification appeared. Chloe is recording a voice message. The first one was 30 seconds long. I pressed play, and my sister's voice, shrill and distorted with rage, filled our quiet kitchen. Are you serious? A lawyer, John. After everything Dad and I do for you, how dare you? You are the most selfish, cruel, ungrateful person I have ever met. There was a pause filled with what sounded like a ragged, gasping breath before she continued, her voice now shifting into a high-pitched, sobbing whine. You have no idea what it's like for me. You have your perfect life, your perfect wife, your perfect house. I have nothing. I am trying to build something, a career. And you want to destroy it over a little bit of money? Money you wouldn't even have missed if the bank hadn't sent you that stupid notification. Sarah and I stared at each other, speechless. It was a full confession wrapped in a blanket of narcissistic fury. She wasn't denying it. She was angry that she'd been caught. Before the first message had even finished echoing in the room, another one arrived, and another. They were a stream of consciousness, a torrent of vitriol and self-pity. Voice message 2, Dad told me you would be fine with it. He said you'd want to help me. This was supposed to be my birthday present from the family. From you, and you're throwing it back in my face and threatening me with a lawyer. Voice message 3, you've always been like this. Always jealous of me and Dad's relationship. You can't stand that he helps me. You have everything, John. Why can't you just let me have this one thing? Listening to her was like peering into a completely different reality. In her world, she was the victim. I was the wealthy, withholding villain, cruelly denying her what she was rightfully owed. The $2,900 wasn't stolen. It was a gift I was now selfishly trying to claw back. The missed birthday party for my son wasn't even a footnote. It didn't exist in her narrative. I felt a strange detachment, the numbness that follows a severe injury. This person screaming through my phone's speaker was my sister, the girl I grew up with, the one I was supposed to protect, but I didn't recognize her. The entitlement was a monstrous thing, a creature that had consumed her whole. Sarah reached over and pressed the stop button. That's enough, she said, her voice trembling with rage. You don't have to listen to that poison. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a different kind of notification, a direct text message. It was from my dad. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had expected a call, a denial, maybe even a twisted apology. But this was something else entirely. His message was short, cold, and devoid of any emotion. It was a command. Call me, don't do anything stupid. Don't do anything stupid. It wasn't a plea, it wasn't a question, it was a threat. He was telling me to stand down. The implication was clear. You know the rules of this family. You know your place. Don't you dare challenge it. What does it say? Sarah asked, her eyes searching mine. I showed her the phone. She read the words and a look of profound disgust settled on her face. Unbelievable, she whispered. After all this, he's not worried about you or what they did. He's worried about himself. He's worried about being held accountable. She was right. This was his version of damage control. He was going to try to shut me down, to remind me of my role as the compliant son, the one who smooths things over and absorbs the family's dysfunction. But the man he was about to talk to wasn't that person anymore. That John had died sometime between the sad, deflating balloons and the notification for the $2,900 charge. I took a deep breath, walked out of the kitchen and into my home office, closing the door behind me. I needed to do this alone. I stared at his name on the screen for a long moment, then I pressed call. The phone rang only once before he picked up. There was no greeting, no hello, or John, just the sound of his breathing on the other end of the line, heavy and impatient. "What do you think you're doing?" he finally said, his voice a low growl. It was the same tone he used to use when I'd tracked mud into the house as a kid. It was the voice of pure, undiluted disappointment. But he wasn't disappointed in his actions, he was disappointed in my reaction. "I think I'm responding to my family stealing nearly $3,000 from me," I said, surprised by how steady my own voice was. The cold clarity I'd felt earlier had solidified into a backbone of steel. He scoffed, a short, sharp, dismissive sound. "Don't be so dramatic, John. It's not stealing. It's family. Chloe needed it. Her birthday is next week, and this is her career we're talking about. It's an investment in her future." The words were so stunningly illogical, so completely divorced from reality that for a second I was speechless. "An investment?" I repeated. "You invested my money from my credit card without my permission? Dad, how could you possibly think that was okay?" "Because that's what families do," he shot back, his voice rising. "They help each other. You have a good job, a nice house, a stable life. Your sister is struggling to get on her feet. It was a simple solution. I knew you had the money, and it was just easier to handle it that way." "Easier?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Easier than asking me? Easier than being honest? Or was it just easier than risking I might say no?" There was a pause. I had him there. He knew, and I knew that if he had asked, I would have said no. Not because I didn't want to help, but because I was done funding Chloe's whims while she showed zero respect for me or my family. "And what about Leo?" I pressed on, my voice shaking with a sudden surge of emotion. "What about your grandson's birthday party? You couldn't handle making a phone call. You couldn't spare one afternoon for him. Where were you, Dad?" His answer was the blow that shattered whatever fragile remnants of our relationship were left. "We were busy," he said, his tone flat and unapologetic. "We were at the mall getting things sorted for Chloe. It was a hectic day. Honestly, John, it was just a kid's party. He's 8. He'll get over it." "He'll get over it." The words echoed in the hollow space in my chest. He had dismissed my son's heart, his excitement, his tears as a trivial childhood inconvenience. He had weighed Leo's feelings against a shopping trip for Chloe and found them wanting. In that moment, I saw the truth with blinding, painful clarity. My son didn't matter. I didn't matter. We were footnotes in the grand story of H. "I am and Chloe." "I was going to pay you back," he continued, as if that somehow excused the entire sordid affair. "I was going to mention it to you eventually. You're the one blowing this all out of proportion with these ridiculous threats about lawyers. You're trying to tear this family apart over nothing." "Over nothing?" My voice cracked. "You think grand larceny is nothing? You think breaking your grandson's heart is nothing? I'm not the one who tore this family apart, Dad. You and Chloe did that. You did it when you decided your wants were more important than anyone else's rights or feelings. You did it last weekend." I waited for a flicker of remorse, a hint of shame, an apology, anything. It never came. All I got was a heavy, stubborn silence. He was digging in. In his mind, he was the benevolent father making a tough but necessary executive decision for the good of his favorite child. I was the ungrateful son disrupting the family harmony. That's when I finally asked the question I already knew the answer to, but I needed to hear him say it. "Did you do it, Dad?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Did you take my credit card information from your computer and use it to buy that equipment for Chloe?" His sigh was loud and theatrical, the sigh of a deeply put-upon man. "Yes, John, I did. I told you I was handling it. I was being a father to my daughter, and I'd do it again. She needed my help." And there it was, the confession. No shame, no regret, just a defiant statement of his twisted principles. He had chosen. He had been choosing his entire life, and I had been too blind, too hopeful to see it. The man I had spent my life trying to earn a crumb of approval from simply didn't exist. He was a fiction I had created in my own mind. The person on the other end of this phone was a stranger, a man who would steal from one child to give to the other and call it love. "Okay," I said, a strange calm washing over me. It was the calm of finality of a decision made. "Okay, Dad, I understand now." "Good," he said, misinterpreting my tone as capitulation. "Now you're going to call off this lawyer nonsense, and we are going to forget this ever happened." "No," I said softly. You don't seem to understand. I called you to give you a chance to make this right. You chose not to, so no, I will not be calling off anything. Goodbye, Dad. I didn't wait for his response. I ended the call and blocked his number. Then I did the same for Chloe. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't empty or heavy, it was clean. It was the silence of a slate wiped clean, of a terrible weight finally being lifted. I walked out of the office and back into the kitchen, where Sarah was waiting, her face a mask of anxious anticipation. She didn't have to ask. The look on my face told her everything. He admitted it, I said, my voice hoarse. He admitted everything, he said he'd do it again. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, letting out a long, slow breath. I'm so sorry, John, she whispered, pulling me into a hug. I leaned into her, the full weight of the last 34 years finally crashing down on me. I wasn't just mourning the theft or the missed party. I was mourning the loss of a father I never really had, the death of a hope I had carried for far too long. We stood there for a long time, and in that embrace the path forward became crystal clear. This wasn't a family squabble we could sweep under the rug. This was a crime, and more than that, it was a fundamental breach of the trust that is supposed to be the bedrock of a family. To protect my own family, the one standing right here with me, the one that truly mattered, I had to treat it as such. With Sarah sitting beside me offering quiet support, I made 2 calls. The first was to my credit card company. I explained the situation calmly and clearly. I wasn't an angry son, I was a customer reporting a fraudulent transaction. I gave them the date, the amount, and the merchant. I told them I knew who had made the purchase and that I was prepared to file a police report. The agent on the other end was professional and efficient. They immediately froze the charge, opened an investigation, and assured me I would not be held liable. The second step was harder but necessary. I went to the local police department's website and found the online form for reporting financial crimes. My hands were steady as I typed. I detailed the unauthorized use of my credit card information. I uploaded screenshots of Chloe's unhinged, confessing voice messages and my father's cold, commanding text. I attached a digital copy of the credit card statement. Each keystroke was a small act of liberation, a cutting of a toxic cord. When I finally clicked the submit button, a profound sense of relief washed over me. It was done. The consequences were now out of my hands. The final act was to inform the rest of the family. I didn't owe them an explanation, but I knew. If I didn't provide one, I would be painted as the villain in a story they would surely twist to their own ends. I opened the family group chat for the last time. It was still filled with a flurry of panicked and accusatory messages from various relatives. I ignored them all. I typed out a single, concise message. For those of you asking what's going on, it's simple. My father, Richard, and my sister, Chloe, conspired to use my credit card without my permission to make a purchase of $2,900. This came just days after they unanimously decided not to show up for my son's 8th birthday. After they admitted to the theft and showed absolutely no remorse, I was left with no choice. I have reported the fraudulent charge to my bank and have filed a report with the police. This is no longer a family matter, it is a criminal one. From this day forward, my only family is Sarah and Leo. We ask that you respect our decision and our privacy. Please do not contact us again. I read it over once, took a deep breath and hit send. Then, without waiting for the inevitable explosion of replies, I navigated to the group settings and selected Leave Group. A confirmation popped up. Are you sure you want to leave this group? I pressed yes without a moment's hesitation. The digital severing was complete. Almost immediately, my phone began to ring. It was my Aunt Carol. I declined the call. A text popped up. John, you can't be serious. You're destroying the family. I blocked her number. Another call came in from an unknown number this time. I let it go to voicemail. Sarah and I stood together, a united front against the storm we had unleashed. But inside our home, there was no storm. For the first time in a very long time, there was peace. We had closed the door on the chaos, on the walking on eggshells, on the constant, gnawing anxiety of waiting for the next disappointment. It was a painful, brutal amputation, but it was necessary to save the rest of us. That night, we ordered Leo's favorite pizza and watched a movie. As I sat there on the couch with my wife's head on my shoulder and my son laughing at the screen, I knew I had made the right decision. This was my family, this was my home, and I would protect it no matter the cost. The months that followed were a study in quiet adjustment. The legal process moved at a bureaucratic crawl. The credit card company finalized its investigation and permanently removed the charge as promised. The police took our statements, and while they informed us that such cases within families are notoriously difficult to prosecute, they assured us they were taking it seriously. Whether my dad and sister would ever face real legal consequences remained to be seen, but honestly, it had ceased to be my primary concern. The real victory wasn't in their punishment, but in our freedom. The biggest change was the silence. The constant background noise of my old family's drama had vanished. There were no more passive-aggressive texts from Chloe, no more phone calls from my dad that started with a list of his own problems before he'd even ask how I was. Holidays became peaceful, relaxed affairs instead of tense, obligatory performances. For Thanksgiving, the three of us drove to the mountains and rented a small cabin. We went on hikes, cooked a simple meal, and talked about what we were truly grateful for: each other. The absence of my extended family left a void, but it was not a painful one. It was a clean, quiet space that Sarah, Leo, and I quickly filled with our own traditions, our own laughter, our own peace. We had been a self-sufficient little island all along. We just needed to finally cut the toxic, crumbling bridge that connected us to a mainland of dysfunction. About a month after what we now grimly referred to as the incident, we threw Leo a re-birthday party. The guest list was small and curated. It consisted of Sarah's parents, who had been nothing but supportive, a few of Leo's best friends from school, and their parents, people who had become our genuine friends. We had a barbecue in the backyard. The kids ran through the sprinkler, their shrieks of joy a beautiful symphony. We brought out a new cake, this one a rocket ship, and as Leo blew out the 9 candles, his 8th birthday candle plus one for the do-over, his face was a picture of pure, uncomplicated happiness. He didn't ask about Grandpa or Aunt Chloe once. It was as if a weight had been lifted from his small shoulders, too. Children are perceptive. He may not have understood the specifics of the betrayal, but he understood the feeling of being in a home that was no longer holding its breath. He felt the peace. As for me, the change was profound. For my entire life, I had subconsciously defined myself by my relationship with my dad and sister. I was the responsible son, the overlooked brother, the one who tried harder and was never quite good enough. Letting go of that struggle was like setting down a elder I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. I was free to be just John, a husband, a father. A man defined not by the approval he sought, but by the love he gave to the family he had built. One evening, Sarah and I were sitting on the porch after putting Leo to bed, watching the fireflies begin their nightly dance. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked softly, cutting them off so completely. I thought about it for a moment, searching my heart for any lingering threads of doubt. I found none. "I regret that it was necessary," I said finally. "I grieve for the family I wish I had, the one I think every kid deserves, but I don't regret protecting this family, our family. I'd do it again in a heartbeat." She smiled and squeezed my hand. "Me too." And that's where we are today. We are healing. We are happy. We are building a life based on mutual respect, honesty, and unconditional love, the things that were so glaringly absent from my childhood. The road was painful, but it led us here to this quiet, peaceful place. We are a smaller family now, but we are a stronger one, and for the first time I feel whole. For anyone out there who might be in a similar situation, caught in a cycle of disrespect and toxic family dynamics, I know how hard it is to draw that final line. The guilt, the sense of obligation, it can be overwhelming. But you have to ask yourself, what are you teaching your own children about what love and respect look like? For me, the answer to that question made the hardest decision of my life, the only one I could possibly make. What would you have done in my shoes? Was I right to involve the law, or should family problems always stay within the family no matter the cost? I'd be interested to read your thoughts in the comments.